Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Hangoutlander. I'm Beth, and we're talking about episode 11 of season 4. It's called If Not for Hope. And if you're joining us live, use the hashtag Hangoutlander on Twitter or chat with us in the YouTube chat, and we will chat back at you. I am having a glass of Pinot Grigio tonight because red wine makes me headachy. I've discovered I'm not having anymore. I'm also having gummy bears. So that's my candy of choice. And it's a very small group tonight, which means that our chat may not last for very long, which is fine. I didn't love the episode, so I said all I needed to say, I think, at some point. But we have a brand new panelist with us tonight. I met her tonight, which means you guys are meeting her tonight. She's written a couple of things about Outlander for us on the site that have been hilarious and fun. And she live tweets Outlander every week on her own page. And so say hello, Elise, introduce yourself and tell us about you and what you're drinking and etc.
I'm Elise. Start with that. Let's see. What am I drinking? Oh, I found at the bodega they had Narragansett Del Shandy, which they never have in New Jersey. So I got really excited, even though this is a summer drink and it's currently January. So I'm drinking that, which probably means it's really old, but I'm okay with that.
Old bodega drinks. Sounds great.
You can't beat them.
And so how did you find that's normal? And usually when somebody is super brand new, we want to find out like who they are a little bit and how they found us and etc.
Okay. Let's see. I found you guys because well, let's start. I got seriously obsessed with Outlander when I was out of work for 2 weeks, and I watched all of it in 3 days, and then that just delved into a deep Tumblr hole and into a deep Google search. And I found your article when Sam Heughan was cast, and I was like, I love these people. I was like,
me specifically. Yes,
exactly.
Okay.
I was like, I'm in. Count me in. And then it just kind of went from there. I'm 28, so I dare say I'm on the younger side of the Outlander people, at least on Twitter.
Definitely not a part of the grandma contingent at this point. Good for you.
Definitely not. I'm from Vermont. I live in New Jersey. I make TV for a living, and I watch a lot of television. So television's pretty much my life.
That's awesome. I love when people come to Outlander from the show and become super fans, because that seems so bizarre to me because we've been following the show for so long and we're so disappointed in it sometimes. But I feel like this first, as a show watcher, do you binge seasons 1 through 3 all through the summer?
Yep. And
okay.
I think it was 10 days. It was, I was out of work. We were on a 2-week break from my work. So I was like, I needed a new show, and I had my in-laws cable access at that time. And I was like, I heard this is good. So turn that on. And then that turned into a full-on problem to the point where
you have to justify yourself. Let's just throw that out. You're among friends. That's normal.
This is normal. Right. Great. This is what I like. That's normal. Because my non-Outlander friend, I only have one Outlander friend in real life, and we're just screaming at each other, and my other friends are like, please stop.
That happens. That's normal as well.
Exactly.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, okay, so when you first watched it, were you just entranced with the story, and then did you watch all of it and then read? Or did you just watch season 1 and then did you pick up book 2 or something like that? Or did you just keep watching?
I watched seasons 1 through 3, all in a row. And then I read books 1 through 3. And then since I knew season 4 was coming out, I was like, let's wait. Also because they take so long to tape. I was like, nope, we gotta extend this. Gotta keep it going.
You had to find another obsession in the interim. Oh yeah.
And it did surprise me how different the books and the show are, which I kind of enjoy.
Yes, I like that too, but I'm coming at it from the opposite perspective, which is I know these characters really well. I'm totally anticipating what's about to happen, and I want them to get the iconic things that I love about the books.
See, I have no expectations of iconic.
Right.
But you can definitely tell when they drop a book line. You're like, oh, that's definitely that's a book line.
Do you remember the first time you felt that way?
when he said the secret, wait, not secrets. What is it? You have my name, you have my clan. I was like,
Yeah.
yep,
And the
that's a book
protection of my
line.
body as well as the rest
Yep.
of that line. Yeah.
This we pray. I was like, yep, that's a thing. And then this season, as soon as Roger was like, feel my heart, I was like, oh, yep, that's a book line. Oh.
Yeah. This is my dog's annoying me, so I just thought I'd let her see what everybody. Okay, Hazel. Well, were you ever surprised reading the books by things, or did you find yourself disliking them in any way, or disliking any of the characters more so than you did in the show, or vice versa?
I like show Jenny a lot better than I like book Jenny.
Yes.
I'm probably going to get murdered, but I actually like show Jamie better than I like book Jamie. Just because show Jamie seems more realistic to me, because I'm like I get it. Like, no one fucking talks like this. Like,
yeah.
Like, show Jamie seems very real, and book Jamie seems more idealistic than I can like buy into.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And book Claire and show Claire are pretty much equal in like, they're really annoying sometimes, and then the rest of the time they're great.
Right. Yeah. She's the best and the worst.
Yeah. Show Bree and show Fiona definitely beat the book ones, in my opinion, also.
Oh, show Fiona is far better than book Fiona.
And Bree in the book seems kind of annoying, and she seemed, especially this season, she seems significantly less annoying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not that fond of Brianna in the books, but I think that's because when I first read them, I was just ready to go back to Jamie and Claire, which a lot of times is how I feel about the show. A lot of people are saying
that seems to be a consensus on the Twitterverse.
Right. I did want to say hi to everybody on YouTube. You guys are chatting through, and there's no boxes on the bottom. So like when I'm talking, you won't see Elise's face, and when she's talking, you won't see mine, because there's only two of us. That the boxes happen when there's more than two. So that's kind of annoying, but sorry about that. And a bunch of people, Brittany also binged 1 through 3, and then she became obsessed. And then Diana just said she watched season 1, read books 2 through 4, and then audiobook the rest, which she highly recommends. Audiobooking is a big deal in this fandom, but I've never done it.
I've never done it either. Audiobooks make me fall asleep, generally, unless they're like Harry Potter, because those are like the best audiobooks ever known to man.
Yeah, I can do audiobooks because once I started listening to podcasts, I realized I could get a ton done and have all of this information like into my head. And that was really, really excellent. So I could do laundry and I could go take my kids to school.
See, and I do it on the commute to work on the subway.
Yeah.
And then I can't even listen to like certain podcasts, because then I end up like laughing, and I go to work at 5 a.m. So like nobody likes the chick sitting laughing to herself at 5 a.m. on like a Tuesday. They're like, what is this bitch right now? Like, shut up.
Oh, Hazel, get out of my face. Somebody wants to know what's on your wall.
Oh, if you're familiar with London Calling, that's Joe Strummer banging his bass into the floor.
Nice.
Yes.
I'm familiar with London Calling. Good job. I like that. But like from the little bit that I could see, I was like, it's not Hogwarts, but it could be.
It definitely could be.
It could be. Just the little bit that I'm saying could be.
Yeah. Okay. We've kind of outlawed most book and or comic book decor in this house, because it would be covered in both of those.
Yes. We have just the tiniest bit.
I like the elf quote behind you.
Yes, it's from Lord of the Rings, and I did not pay attention to it enough to know that. My sister-in-law made it for a wedding, but that was our frame. And then she gave us the frame back and just like left that in it. And I was like, oh, I like that. I'll just put it in the dining room. And I love Lord of the Rings. I literally haven't ever read it. I
have never read it either. I got into
I mean the quote. I've never read the quote.
I've never read Lord of the Rings, but I know the movies very, very well.
I used to read them every summer. I've told this story before, but for your edification, when I was in like the 7th grade, there was this super hot guy at our school who was several years older than me. And he's one of those guys that had like patches on his backpack. And this was pre-Google, because I'm old. And he had a little thing that said Frodo lives on his backpack. And like, I'd already found like The Cure and Pixies and Fugazi and all the other stuff that was on his backpack. And I was like, what's Frodo Lives? Can't wait to hear that band. And so like literally went to the library and looked up Frodo Lives and couldn't find it, but then found Frodo, found Lord of the Rings, read it, tried to be cool, but loved it anyway. And then, never talked to him. But
I like how that story ends.
Yeah. I read Lord of the Rings every summer. I've read it every summer. Until the past 5 years. I don't have time. But
I do that with Harry Potter generally. I'll read books 1 through 7 every summer.
Well, it's the same thing. So
exactly.
You're hitting the same parts. So let's get into this. We have done a very nice introduction to who you are. I feel like I know you so much better. It's been excellent. Hazel says hello. And Purely Amuse wanted to talk about how there is no comic relief in this whole season.
Accurate. Literally though.
So true.
I need an Angus. I need a Rupert. They killed Leslie.
Leslie wasn't even funny.
They were funny together.
I mean, even Ian has got young Ian should have some comic relief hitting some notes, and he's just not.
No.
Nothing has been funny. Jamie has
been very serious season.
It is very serious. The season itself is very odd, and because next week is the penultimate episode, you feel like it's coming to a head, but at the same time,
I genuinely don't know what's going to happen next week, and I'm very stressed about it. And my one real life Outlander friend is like, wait until you see. I'm like, you're driving me actually insane.
So what is your perceived notion of what's going to happen next week and then in the end of this season? How do you think it's going to end?
I think that Roger is going to run this Native American gauntlet, which, by the way, I was like, is this historically accurate? But somebody on Twitter was like, yeah, this is a thing. I was like, okay. I don't remember learning about this in middle school. But for some reason, I think he's going to bond with his captors, and then he's going to be pissed when Jamie and Claire show up because he got the shit kicked out of him, which, I mean, seems to be a reoccurring theme of this season. But I don't know how they're going to get him back to Brianna. And they I swear to God, if we have to wait until season 5 for them to get back together, I'm going to punch something and it's not going to go well. I'm going to throw a Kindle. Bree, I don't know if she's actually going to marry Lord John, because I think Lord John is smart enough to be like, we can have a long engagement. And then again, they're out in the middle of nowhere. If she has a baby, who's going to tell people? They can be like, we found this baby, because you could do that. That was the thing.
It is kind of strange that they're really, really worried about her place in society when she literally just popped up out of nowhere.
Exactly. And I also love how she shows up and they're like, she's like, I'm Jamie's kid. And they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, it really is a ridiculous thing to worry about bastard culture when you can come in and be like, I'm so-and-so's daughter. Totally in wedlock. It's perfectly fine. Even though, my parents weren't together for 20 years, but I'm totally their legitimate daughter. Why are you so worried about it?
What's her story where they're so where have you been? Is she just I've been in Boston, because they counted on no one knowing each other?
They literally have had no questions about who she is and where she came from. Nobody.
Zero questions. Zero questions. Well, I did young Ian, where he was like, I'm not going to ask.
Right. And I mean,
and also, could we get married even though we're first cousins? Could that happen?
Yeah. I think that somebody even said that she talks about her father in the last episode in front of Ian and Lizzie.
Yeah.
To Jamie.
Don't get me motherfucking started on Lizzie.
Nobody pipes up with what do you mean? Who are you talking about? Your father? Who are you talking about?
I know. They're just cool. She's here. All right. Move on.
Claire's whole shtick, I guess, her whole backstory when she came back is that she moved to America thinking that Jamie had died and married someone else, and now he's dead. But I don't think she ever even told Jenny or Ian or anyone else that she had Brianna.
Still worked for Brianna. That she's that's my adopted dad, and he died in Boston, I guess. But again, they don't really ask anything about it.
Yeah, it's very odd. But it's still the whole entire point of that is they're so concerned about this bastard baby. It's just ridiculous. And it's even ridiculous that she goes along with it. Considering she's, she's not the kind of person that goes along with things just for the sake of it.
Here's my thing. So she's like, I know I can time travel through the stones, and I know that I can time travel through pregnant because my mom told me so. So, like, just saying, if I was her, I would be like, I'm going to go back to Scotland, go through the stones, go back to the 60s where, like, this, granted, it probably would still been like, oh my God, she had a baby. But, like, and I'd just be like, hey, parentals, can you send Roger back to me? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
is that
that's
an
exactly
option?
right. Yeah, just have Roger come back and
Because we
just
know
let him
Roger
know where
can
I
time
am.
travel.
Yeah, just let him know I went back and that I'm
Exactly.
pregnant.
And like,
And
meet me there.
yeah. I guess that the whole assumption is the same reason that they like the better thing for them to do would have been to like go to Philly or go to Boston or go somewhere else, and they didn't. And I think that that's part of it is they're not really thinking about really what the best things to do are. They're just kind of going through the motions of keeping everybody together so the plot can kind of
Together-ish.
yeah. But I mean, I guess they're thinking that the travel and having to actually go across the sea back to Scotland would be problematic because they don't
Which
know
I
about
guess, I mean, yeah, it takes like 4 months, but at the same time, I'm like, you're trying to marry her off before she has this baby. And like, how are you going to sell, like, oh, I got pregnant on our wedding night and had a fully formed baby like 5 months later?
yeah.
Which I guess is the advantage if she marries Lord John, because he can just be like, yeah, that's totally a thing.
Yeah.
I'm really hot. Listen to me.
Really concerned about Lord John being perfectly okay with marrying her, knowing Jamie's going to hate it, and
That's my
knowing
thing.
that he's raising her half brother that he can't tell her about because he
I was
doesn't have the
kind of
authority
waiting
to.
for that to come up. I think it's going to eventually come up. But I wasn't totally sold on Lord John in the books or in the series, especially after, what was it, like 407, where he showed up and he was like, Claire, like, your husband said he was going to have sex with me. And she was like, you're dying of measles. Like, why are we having this conversation?
I know.
Because I was like, you seem kind of like an asshole. Like, I'm not going to lie. You're like, oh, like, Jamie loves me. I'm like, no, he doesn't. This episode actually sold that he cares about them as like a whole, which I like, because now it's just not like, I'm in love with Jamie, I'm in love with Jamie. It's like, okay, I'm in love with Jamie, but I also give a shit about Claire. I'm not just raising Jamie for Willie. Like, I clearly am gonna do something crazy for this Brianna that is apparently Jamie's child.
Yeah, it's kind of odd though. He never mentions Claire's name. He constantly says like your
Your
parents
mother. Yeah.
or your mother. And so he never mentions her by name. And I think that Lord John in general is he's been made ridiculous in the books, and it goes a little bit farther in later books in the ways that she makes him ridiculous. But Lord John is a worldly person who has plenty of experience with men and befriending men and also being with them. And it's really sad that he never just let Jamie go. Like
Yeah, that's valid. Because I'm like, he
I
still
hate
manages to have these like outside relationships, clearly. Which, by the way, I totally knew he was going to have sex with that guy. Because what guy is like hanging out with his mom at
exactly.
age 57 in the 1700s?
Yes. But it's very frustrating that the majority of his motivation is meant to be because he is legitimately perpetually in love with a man he cannot have. And yet that man keeps him, at this friendship distance, but then also does weird stuff like that episode in 407 where he like stands up in front of him and he's like, do you want a sip? Before he's picked up the whiskey behind him. I mean, like Jamie's like constantly like doing dickish stuff like that. I don't think necessarily on purpose, but the show did it on purpose. But I think that like just having Lord John in love with Jamie as a through line to the series does the character of Lord John a disservice, because he could be really great and he has some of the best lines in the entire series. He's totally like caustic and dry and sarcastic and like smart and intelligent. Just he's honorable. He's this great, fantastic character, but he's in love with a straight guy. And I just hate it.
And like a little bit creepily in love with a straight guy. Like, I just appeared in Virginia. I like just appeared in fucking, where are we? Wilmington, Delaware?
Yeah, like raising his
North
son.
Carolina. Damn it. Okay.
Like raising his son for Jamie's sake in order to feel like intimately connected to Jamie as if they had birthed this boy together. I mean, that's kind of the whole idea, the whole like motif of men raising children that are not their own in this series culminates with Lord John being weirdly attached to William as the legitimate like seed of Jamie. And that's gross and weird. And I realize that he probably loves William for his own sake, but he also loves William for the Jamie aspects that he sees in William, which
True.
is
I think
weird.
he started with the Jamie aspect and is now like, well, I've raised you and thus I love you because I've spent every day with you.
Right.
Also, he was like totally weirdly fine with his wife dying, which sucked because I liked his wife. His wife was a nice lady.
Yes, it was very.
And like I get he has to
disgusting.
like feel again or whatever, but I'm like, your wife was a nice lady and she did you a solid.
Yeah, it's ridiculous the way he talked about her. But again, he's gay. Like, let him be gay and happy, not gay and in this like tortured, unrequited situation that's also fraught by raising his non-lover's son. It's very, very fraught. So let's discuss Lord John's assignation in the pantry. Because
would not have guessed he was a top.
I have a friend who has screeners as well for another outlet, and she texted me immediately, and she's like, have you watched it yet, because I have to say something and I don't want to spoil it for you. And I was like, yeah, I watched it. And she was like, as if Lord John is a top. And I was like, well,
I was not expecting that. I genuinely was not. But then again, that guy definitely seemed like a bottom. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, that guy did. But I think that Lord John is a top. Like, that's kind of his. She has a whole set of books that are about Lord John, and I'm pretty sure I haven't read them, but I'm pretty sure he's a top. I don't know. Maybe he switches. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't care what he does. But I don't have a problem with that. My problem is I felt like, and I wrote about this in my recap. You guys are just getting the highlights. I just felt as if, of course he would be more discreet. That guy would be more discreet. That guy looked like he could barely, pick his nose in front of other people without freaking out. So that guy would have been more discreet, Alderdice, whatever his name was. But John would have totally been more discreet. Now, in the book, you haven't read it, but in the book, they make a change here. Unfortunately, in the book, Brianna sees Lord John coming out of the slave quarters late at night.
Oh.
And makes the deduction that that's what he's been doing.
So we went very explicit in the show.
It wasn't as explicit in the books, but at the very least, it was consensual and there wasn't a power differential. So that was a good thing. I'm glad that they made that change.
I would agree.
However, I felt like the scene itself was super tawdry for characters who would have deserved to have something more romantic and sweet. Not necessarily sweet, but at the very least, like lustful and mutual and fun, and not.
I think it was more like it was a little bit like of an overstatement for me, but I also get it because like, oh, it's the shock value. Do you know what I mean? Like
I think that they wanted it to be shocking for Brianna, but there are like lots of ways to show intimacy and even, flat out just like screwing, like dirty screwing, without it being mostly clothed, doggy style. I mean, like, there's just other ways to do it that don't feel impersonal and tawdry and made it look as if Lord John, even the look on David Barry's been fantastic in both seasons that he's been in.
So good.
The look on his face when she first comes around the corner, he looks angry and
he looks ashamed. They both do.
He just
I get because it's like the 1700s, but
that's the thing. Like, he shouldn't be. Like, that's not who his character is, and that's doing the representation of having a gay character on the show, one who has honor, one who is a good man, one who, all of the other things that he is, it reduces him to just the shame that he might feel because of his sexuality. And that's a little unfair. So I just felt it was unfair to him as a character. And I wish they had done something a little bit more, show them kind of disrobing, kissing, one of them buttoning the other's breeches.
Nice blowjob in there instead.
Yeah, just something that was more like a tryst and less like, back alley type of situation, which is what it looked like. And I just felt like that was unfair.
That's valid.
Yeah. So I think a bunch of people are saying on YouTube, yes, they're agreeing. And some people are saying he would have been killed if anybody saw. So he definitely would have been more careful. It's a crime. He's got responsibilities that he needs to take care of. He wouldn't have put himself in that position. Absolutely. It's not just himself that he has to worry about. He also has to worry about, Jamie's son. Like, be discreet.
Also that.
But they definitely wanted to shock the audience. That's what Lachey just said. And also that it looked like they had no control. I just felt that yes, they looked like they were not even enjoying themselves. Like they just.
Yeah, it definitely looked like, oh, this is happening. It did not look like a pre-planned endeavor.
Yeah. And could have been just much sweeter and cuter. She could have seen him coming out of this guy's room, like half dressed and giggling and kissing each other and like maybe even like hand in the hair, something cute. Like I was just really unhappy with it. It was just lazy. It was lazy the way it was written. It was unfair to Lord John. It's unfair to the LGBT representation on the show, especially since the only other character that we've seen have any inclination toward the same sex has been horrible Blackjack and all of his.
That wasn't even like, he wasn't even gay though. He was just like a terrible fucking person.
Right. He's a super duper sadist, but here we have like the opportunity to show like love and attention and even just like general lust and sating that lust in a way that wouldn't be explicit and kind of like down and dirty. And they didn't do that. And that's ridiculous in my mind. Let's talk about the dumb psychology game. Nadine just brought it up in the YouTube chat.
Okay, this is like the one thing that I actually couldn't stand because I'm generally like very positive about it. Like the whole show, I love the whole show, don't get me wrong. I'm like when you wrote your piece on like the wigging Outlander, I'm just like the yay! Like 95% of the time, but this actually drove me crazy.
Yes.
And I would just like to say, I looked it up, and the last witch trial in America was in 1878. So they would have been like, who is this bitch? And why is she asking us this?
I don't think that the word was a thing. I know that they said that at the end credits or whatever, that it was like, Tony was like, oh no, it was totally like a thing. Not enough for these people to just like stop and be like, oh, fun, a party game about psychology. I mean, that'd be like
this. Yeah, it was totally weird and out of context and very like out of place.
Like imagine somebody comes to a dinner party, you've never met them before, and they're beautiful and they're sitting there and they have nothing to say, and then they're like, let's do a party game about string theory. And you're like, I think I've heard of string theory, but that party game doesn't sound fun, you fucking weirdo. Like
exactly. You're like, no, I'm fine, thanks. Like let's. Also, this is my other thing that really bothered me the whole episode. I don't know how like enlightened they were in the 60s, but her mother is a doctor and she would be like, please stop drinking wine.
It's so much. Now, Claire drinks a lot of wine in the books when she's pregnant, and I'm always like, what is going on? I really think
like, in book 2, she's just like drinking wine. I'm like, I feel like you know this. At least by the 70s, they knew fetal alcohol syndrome was a thing.
I'm thinking that when she was pregnant in the second book, I don't think she would have necessarily known as much about it from then because her experience was in the 40s and before, and she was just a nurse. So maybe not. Also, I think that maybe the wine would have been safer to drink than like water. I mean,
that's sad.
Maybe. I mean, I remember, I was brought up very evangelical and like nobody drank and all that kind of stuff. So when people are trying to like say why Jesus drank wine, they'd be like, well, other liquids were not as safe because they would have parasites, et cetera. It was like one of the reasons they would say that Jesus would drink wine. So like my thought is that maybe
that's like the whole reasoning behind kosher. They invented kosher because people were getting food poisoning from shellfish. So they're like, thou shalt not eat things with shells.
Right. Anywho, that was in my mind, but who knows? I think definitely Brie would not be like chugging that much wine. I'm
like
sure
she drank a lot of wine. There was like wine after they agreed they were going to get married. There was wine at dinner. Like,
yeah, okay. So Candace just said, I feel like they drank during pregnancy in the 60s. I don't know, but my mother was born in 1958 and my grandmother drank with her. So maybe. And then someone else, Amy Rose said it was also late 70s for fetal alcohol syndrome. I believe that. I do. I believe that it's probably a little bit later that people were like, that fetal alcohol syndrome became a thing, but like, it's still weird. It's still weirding me out.
Yeah.
I'm still cracking up at people being like, Matt Roberts creeps me out in every after show. What is it? Why is he so smug? Why?
Okay, I don't have this feeling. I didn't know this was a thing.
It is a thing.
This is a thing. Okay, all right. Interesting. Interesting.
Apparently, he bugs people the wrong way, and I mean, like, he bugs me too, but like for other reasons. One, because I don't like like general amounts of like that much arrogance, and I really feel like season one was far better when Ron was in charge and not trying to make
Season
like
one also had like zero expectations. Like it had expectations from fans, but I also think there was also like a fact of like, we got our show. Like, and because season two, I'm not a fan of. Season three, I really liked. This season's kind of like middling, but I think everybody's consensus pretty much that season one was the best season.
yeah. Sorry,
But
Lily
then
just
Ron's
said,
off doing not Battlestar Galactica, like Electric Sheep, Android Dreams,
yeah, I don't know what he's
something.
doing. I'm not watching any of that. But
Yeah.
someone just said, please don't ever say just a nurse again. A lot of nurses watch Outlander. I'm like not denigrating nurses. I'm just saying like I don't think she was like in the 40s as a wartime nurse. I don't think Claire
They
was
would have
like,
been like, don't drink alcohol.
I don't
Like,
think she would have been like super versed in all of the pathologies from alcohol. I don't know. I might be wrong. I'm not a nurse. So I love nurses,
big
but
fan.
I'm not one. Anyway, so yeah, the show is very different this season, but I do want to talk about one change that I liked in this episode. Mostly it was just the fact that we went back and forth between settings and characters. And there's so much going on in this show. There's so much going on with so many different people. I wish that we were doing this all the time, and that when they had like episodes that do that, that they didn't feel so different from the rest of the season.
But
What did you
then
think of that?
to me, like everyone's always like, there's not enough Jamie and Claire. There's not enough Jamie and Claire. And I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I get that when you think
But I'm
about
also a big Roger and Bree person.
but you like Roger and Bree because of the show?
Yeah, I really like Roger and Bree on the show. I do kind of want to kick Roger in the head a lot of the time because A, I'm like, can we not slut shame people? That's not cool. B,
Right.
like, he really likes to get in his own way, which is very frustrating, but also is in line with just all the characters I like on all television shows ever.
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me. But yeah, I think Richard Rankin does a really good job at like being the dick that Roger is, unfortunately, in the show. Because I liked Roger a lot better in the book.
Yes. My problem with Roger and Brianna in the show specifically is that I don't buy their romance. I don't really buy it very much in the book.
Why
either.
don't you buy it? I buy it.
They haven't even spent any time together. She leaves she leaves Scotland when her mother does. He comes to Boston once for Christmas. Her mother leaves, and then he goes back. They're not spending a whole lot of time together. And then, like, you get no information about, are they courting each other back and forth? Are they writing letters? Are they in love with each other? Are they telling each other that they want to be together? In the book, she comes to Scotland for Christmas, and they have this like sexy moment in the manse, and then they have this like pretty moment on a bridge in the snow where he proposes, and she says no, the same thing that happened at the thing. But it's just like a little bit different, thinking that she went to visit him and like he came to visit her, and there was just like a little bit more going on. But even that, you're not spending a lot of time they're not spending a lot of time developing their romantic connection, and they're just kind of thrown together in book 2. And then by book 3, they're not really spending any time together whatsoever. And so by book 4, when she leaves and he follows her, it feels like they haven't earned that, to me.
I don't know what it is. I buy it. Like, I think they're great together. And this is also a very unpopular opinion, but I really liked when Frank and Claire got married at the courthouse, because that was my vote for when we got married. I was outvoted. And when they do hand fasting, I was like, this is adorable. This is just like, I love you. Let's do this. Like, let's make it happen. So I loved that. I thought that was adorable.
I felt like it came out of nowhere. And
I did read the recap.
I'm like, this has not been earned. I do not believe that she's like ready for marriage in this gross barn.
He was like, oh my God, you're here. You followed me. Like, you love me. Let's go for broke. That was kind of how I took it.
Yeah, I think maybe I would just rather it be evident from the beginning that they can't live without each other. She left without a word. We don't even still know how she really found the obituary.
That is bothering me.
There's just so much going on behind the
Because
scenes
she's
with
like, oh,
them.
daddy had the obituary, but I'm like, yeah, but how did you find this
Yeah, like
obituary?
she's going through his stuff for some, I mean, it just does, none of that's been explained whatsoever. But then, like, her choice to do that, like, they were so worried about making the moment where she goes through the stones and making the moment where he follows her and having like these little cliffhangers that then had a whole episode between or whatever, that they didn't tell the story of why she's doing what she's doing and why she didn't tell him and why she's like worried about him following her. Like that would have been a through line for the season that would have made sense so that when he does show up, her anger at him following her doesn't feel like she doesn't want you there, bud. Like you're being like a stage 5 clinger, like go home back to Scotland. It would be more like
I
she's
totally didn't
upset
get
that
stage
he,
5 clinger.
but the problem is you don't know why she's mad that he followed her. There's no like, you could have gotten yourself killed. You didn't know that you could go through the stones. Like there's so many dangers here. Like I can't believe you did this. You don't really feel her care for him. You just feel like she just went and did what she needed to do and didn't really consider him at all because we never saw her consider him in any way. So for her to want to marry him after seeing no consideration for him whatsoever, other than occasionally touching the bracelet, is just bananas to me in terms of what we've seen.
I was in, man. I still am in.
Good.
And then
I'm glad somebody
like,
is.
I was like also into it because it reminded me of Jamie. She's just like, oh, okay, I love you. I saw you. I love you. This is on. It's happening. I'm going to go do what I need to do. I'll be back. I'll try to be back. And now you're here and it works out. We get married and it's happy and we have sex on a weird mattress made of
I don't know.
hay.
I feel like Jamie's love for Claire, he allowed it to have space to grow. And you see him fall in love with her and you see him hold it back, but then still engage her in small ways, keep her safe in small ways. She's trying to escape and he's helping her. I mean, all the little things that he does before they get married.
Well, Stars keeps
are
trying to
different.
sell this as like it's like a modern relationship and they like communicate badly. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's fucking hard to communicate when one of you is in 1700s and the other one is in 1962 or wherever we are.
Yeah.
And granted, yes, they are bad at communication, but I don't generally think that like makes it modern. I think that just makes it a relationship.
Yeah. And it's probably partially like book expectations. Andy in the chat just said there's a part in the book where she says, you were how I was going to get back. And like, why did they leave that out? Like, that's also one of the big reasons that she
That's
needed
fair.
him to
That
stay,
probably would have helped.
for
I
her
was
to
just
have
so
somebody
damn
to come back
excited when
to.
he got there. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't read the book, so I was like, yay, you're
Yeah.
here.
I mean, yeah, in terms of like just pure plot, having him there is better than not having him there. And in terms of pure plot, having him being traded to the Mohawk is better than him just having shown up at Fraser's Ridge and everything gone hunky dory. I just don't always love some of the ways that we get to the places that we've gotten, and that's one of them. Like their romance to me has not blossomed enough for me to care. I actually kind of don't care if he comes back. Like it doesn't bother me. What's like I assume he's going to, but I don't care. Like I don't care. He could go back. He could have been in that shower for real, and I've been like, good for you.
Oh my god, no!
You
I was
get
like,
some Neosporin on those cuts, and you go to
I was
bed.
like, are you fucking kidding me? I was like, after all of this, oh, that was a rough 15 seconds there, but I got through it.
Well,
I don't know what they're gonna do now.
Well,
I'm like, there's 2 episodes left. Like, unless we're doing like a Game of Thrones 2-hour.
They will definitely, journey quickly. If they're not going to like, in the book, this all takes like a really long time. Everything that happens, I'm sure, will happen in quick succession. But I mean, there is like a whole ending to the book that I don't see how they're going to squeeze in the last part of the book. But my assumption too is that it will end up being the first part of season 5, which is interminable. It'll be the longest season ever.
Oh,
because
Jesus.
The book is so bad. So I'm
the Fiery Cross.
It's the Fiery Cross, yeah, and
okay. Good to know.
It's terrible, but Yeah, I'm interested to see where the next 2 episodes go as well, just to see how they push it together. But I actually think it's almost too much time. Like, I'm just like thinking about what's going to happen. I'm like, that's a lot of 2 more episodes. Are you kidding me? We can get this over with in like 30 minutes.
Oh man,
So
I'm like, I don't like. I have a lot of feelings, and I'm like, if these don't get resolved, then Kindles are going to get thrown, and it's not
yeah.
going to go well.
Let's talk a little like hot minute about Brianna, just her in general at River Run, because
This concerned me.
I was very concerned just for the simple fact, and I wrote this in my recap. I'm very concerned with the fact that they had an entire episode about slavery. Claire was complaining about slavery in season 3.
And she said, like, no thanks.
It didn't bother her
Like, the
one bit.
closest she came was being like, why would you be offended that I drew the slave? And I was like, that's
And it was like barely a look on her face. It wasn't even like, she didn't say anything, barely had any reaction. Sophie has reverted to like middle school acting. And like, I could not believe, I mean, I don't even think it's Sophie's fault for the most part. How in the world did the writers not think we have an even more modern woman entering this space, a woman who had a Black roommate in the late 60s, early 70s in the North?
Seemed like they just skipped that entirely.
I mean, I do sometimes wonder if they literally break episodes and then go, you just write, and the person who's writing episode 11 has no idea what's in episode 2. They just know essentially the outline of what's going on throughout the season to when they get there. And they have little points that they have to, they have marks that they have to hit, and they have emotional points that they have to write, but they're not fully aware of what's going on in the rest of the season, because it just doesn't make any sense for that not to have been some sort of callback to the sentiment that was an entire episode early in the season.
I hope they don't write like that, because generally that's not how fiction shows are written. So God willing, that's not how they're written.
Yeah, I mean, but I remember like having some conversations with some of the production people about a couple of things, and like just the way they're hiring writers in and then they're like recycling them back out. Like, they do give episodes.
The 2-block system always seemed very interesting to me, because I don't hear a lot of shows that do like, okay, like you direct 2 blocks, you direct 2 blocks. That was, especially in season 1, I was like, that's not something I've heard of before.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt like this was very disconnected from the rest of the season because of that specifically.
And I would just like to say, as a person who works in television, like, they're going to keep shooting it in Scotland because they've already invested millions of dollars in the area, and they can't just pick up and move to North Carolina. That's not a thing.
No.
Sorry.
And that's fine. Anyone. That's perfectly fine. I would just prefer that they like pick a season and stay in it. Like, is it cold or is it hot? Is it winter?
I don't think it's ever going to be hot. I don't think they can recreate it unless they're just like hosing them down every other second to make them look dewy.
It's unfortunate that it can't be hot, because it's hot in North Carolina more often than it isn't. But yeah, it's always winter, but it's green. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it kind of looks like Vermont, actually. It's always winter, but it's green.
It's not like that in the South. I'm just throwing that out there. It doesn't look like that. I mean, there's still green here, but it's because it hasn't been cold yet. It's still like fallish a little bit. So like my friend had one of those
22 degrees here.
There's like a snowball tree down the street, and it already has buds on it because it's not cold enough to have killed it. It's going to like, the snowball tree is going to like blow up in a little bit. It's going to be really sad.
These are all things I have literally never experienced in my time.
Well, I haven't had a real winter, so that's where I am. Those are fake peonies. But so Marsley is in this episode. Marsley and Fergus and Myrta.
I loved this whole thing.
Yes,
I thought it was awesome. I thought it was awesome. I'm not totally sold on Marsley makes sense to me as a parent. Fergus doesn't quite yet make sense to me as a parent. Like, this is the first time I've actually seen him interact with the baby.
Yeah.
So like I was like, okay, like this is making somewhat more sense. But I liked that they worked that conversation that Jenny and Jamie, I think, had about Ian in like the first book, second book, where they was like, I'll have a whole man they're no man at all. And I was like, that's toxic masculinity. But that's very cute. It's very cute. Toxic.
It was cute. I'm happy that she took charge of something. And I really feel like Lauren Lyle is one of the better.
Awesome. And like Leary's the actual worst. Everyone knows that. The actress is great. But like Leary is the actual worst. And she channeled that like, don't fuck with me.
Yeah.
Very well.
It's very much everything that she's done, even in season 3, like even when they decide to get married and she's on the boat and she's dealing and she's.
Oh, she took like zero shit on the boat.
It's very much like the same type of manipulative like spirit that her mother has, but with an undercurrent of someone who has integrity.
Cares.
Yeah. I mean, she has scruples and she has integrity, and the things that she's manipulating, she's good at it, but she's doing it for the right reasons. And that just makes her very formidable and very interesting and charismatic and somebody that you want to watch. So more Marsley and Fergus, please.
But why don't they live on Fraser's Ridge?
Well, in the book, they're in Jamaica until she has the baby because they decide not to get on a boat and come up to the mainland.
Okay.
And then when they come up to Fraser's Ridge. So the fact that they're still in Wilmington is it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's plenty of space for them on Fraser's Ridge. And really that's all they were kind of waiting for, was there for there to be a cabin for them to go to.
Yeah.
And a reason for them to be there. And in the book by this point, Fergus and Marsley are there and he's running the still.
Right. And I know Murtaugh has passed away at Culloden in the book. Yes. So I'm interested to see where this is going to go.
Yes, we all are interested to see where this is going to go because, of course, nobody knows what they're going to do with Murtaugh. Everybody is we all knew they were going to keep Murtaugh around for a long time. Like we figured that out, way before they did it. It just became pretty obvious. And we were happy. I mean, that's a good change. That's the way the adaptation works. But if he ends up just going to jail and dying after one season for no reason, I will be happy.
Sad.
It will be very ridiculous. There's not a whole, I'm trying to think if there's going to be an inciting action for Jamie in season 5 if Murtaugh dies.
I was kind of wondering what we're doing with the Rangers and how this is all going to tie into Jamie and Claire, because Jamie's made it pretty clear he doesn't want to be a Ranger. And I mean, I'm still wondering how he's going to get out of the Revolutionary War should he live when he took all this land from the governor. But my friend Ellen, who is the real life Outlander friend, is just wait. So I'm waiting.
Yeah. I mean, I have a feeling there's a character that's in the books that's not in the show. His name is Duncan, and he is with Jamie. He's from the prison and all of that. He'd follow Jamie, and he ends up marrying Jocasta, and becomes kind of the laird of her plantation, that co-owner with her there. And there's most of the speculation about Murtaugh was that he was going to be just taking the place of Duncan Ennis. So the fact that he's leading the regulators and leading this cause that becomes a big deal in later books is kind of killing that theory to some degree, but also maybe that particular thread might become the season 5 thread for Murtaugh in preparation for more happening with the regulators later on. Maybe it's a stopgap measure to keep him out of trouble, or something like that. So there is potential for something else to go on there, but I just don't know what it's going to be. Regardless, we're next week going to see Stephen Bonnet in prison. And
listen, I used to think Stephen Bonnet was hot, and then Wilmington happened and just ruined everything.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when your favorites are horrible, horrible rapists.
Not even my favorite. I was like, you're a really good actor. You're really good looking. And the Irish accent is actually doing it for me right now. And then I was like, oh, it's over. It's gone.
Yeah. Can you tell from the preview what Brianna is doing next week?
I literally can't tell anything from the goddamn preview. I was like, this is the world's most cryptic preview. It was like they were sunflower, shoe, left. I'm like, okay, cool. I know nothing about what's coming next week. Jesus.
Yeah. I don't think that Jamie and Claire and Ian and Roger are going to be in it very much. I think it's going to be mostly a Brianna, maybe Lord John episode. It's going to be.
But the Hollywood Reporter interview with Meryl is Roger's doing a tour de force, which I'm hopefully excited about.
Yes, Roger will be in it. I'm not sure that Jamie and Claire will make it to him in any quick fashion, maybe towards the end of the episode, but I might be wrong. Who knows?
Let's hope. Let's hope for all the people that are every episode needs to be Jamie and Claire every minute of it.
Yeah, let's discuss that really quickly because this episode did have a hefty dearth of Jamie and Claire for a lot of folks. Um, here's the
That does
issue.
seem to be the consensus.
And here's the issue with Jamie and Claire. There are people who want Jamie and Claire to be in it continuously because they are horny grandmothers and they really need to see Sam Heughan with his shirt off. That is,
which we all understand.
and I'm fine if you're a horny
not
grandmother.
at the expense of the show.
Right. I have teenage children. I will be a grandmother sooner than I want to talk about. So I understand being a horny grandmother. It's fine. But however, that is not the reason I want to see more Jamie and Claire specifically in this season.
Yes,
in
hit
this
me
episode.
with this because I genuinely don't get it.
The main consideration is that the driving drama of this season becomes Brianna. Brianna going in the past, Brianna finding her parents, Brianna getting raped, Brianna finding her husband in the past, and then Brianna getting pregnant, and Brianna figuring out what she's going to do about that situation and figuring out all of that. The truth of it is, and if you're a book reader and you are involved in what's happening, is all of that is true, but it is subject to how Claire and Jamie react to Brianna. It's subject to how Jamie and Claire continue to connect after their 20-year separation in reaction to Brianna. It's subject to their feeling about family and their feeling about home in relation to their impending grandparenthood and all of the other things that are happening to them. It doesn't happen without their kind of umbrella of emotion and the things that are happening.
So the book is still like Jamie, Claire, and how they feel about all this.
Yes.
Okay.
And so because of that, you're missing a lot of the nuance of why some of it is affecting Jamie and Claire that way. So in this episode, especially there's a whole chapter in the book. I think it's chapter like 53. It's in the 50s.
I love that you just pull that out.
Well, we just read it. I think the chapter's called Blame. And it literally this episode started out kind of hitting some of those notes in good ways. Jamie,
there was a lot of subtext. There was a lot of passive aggression. There was a lot of, I'm pissed at you, but I'm not going to say it, which
valid. Jamie is very disconnected. Jamie is devastated. He's devastated by his own actions. He's devastated if you think about just like an episode and a half ago, how proud and happy and elated and joyful he was to have Brianna with him, to get to watch her, to get to know her, to have her call him Da, like all of the things that he was just like totally exuberant about. And in his mind, at the beginning of this episode or at the end of last week, that is gone, shattered, not because she left, which was his biggest fear an episode ago. His biggest fear was that she was going to go home safely. All right. That's not what shattered it. His own actions in trying to protect her is what shattered it. So he has felt himself be the catalyst, not for her leaving and her no longer being with him, but for her hatred of him. And it is literally his worst nightmare.
Which I totally didn't get until the end when Claire was like, hey, let's like stop ignoring each other. Apologize.
Yeah. I mean, you don't see her really reacting to his devastation. And in the book, and when you read through Claire's feelings, you understand better. She's fully aware of how he is feeling. And the reason she is not going to him, and because Ian in the book is like, y'all need to go have sex. This is ridiculous. Like
I did read that in the recap that in the book Ian was like, listen, I need you to bang this out.
Yes, like y'all need to be doing it so that you're not acting like this anymore. But like part of that is simply because the reason Claire is shutting him out is because she is feeling so much guilt over keeping it from him. And she's not keeping it from him. This is what the problem was. It has nothing to do with like keeping a promise to Brianna, because when you're married, that kind of shit just doesn't fly. Like you just don't, you don't do that kind of stuff when you have kids. Like they have them, don't tell dad. No, I'm telling him. Like, okay, yeah, I won't tell him, but I'm totally telling him. Right.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
like, it's not that. Like the reason she's keeping it from him is because she is terrified. The reason she kept it from him is because she was terrified about how knowing that it was Stephen Bonnet who had raped her would have eaten at him in ways that she did not want him to have to experience. She was protecting him from his own kind of self-flagellation. And that is a far more loving and intimate and Claire and Jamie type of reason for there to have been this huge miscommunication in the first place. But she's feeling guilty about having kept it from him, because if she hadn't, of course, this wouldn't have happened. So there's just layer upon layer, but the layers are not, they're not this surface kind of like blasé. I don't think I can tell you that I can't keep things from you now because I also have secrets with Brianna. That is bullshit in terms of the way that their relationship works. That is not who they are. That is not the reason she would keep something from him. She kept something from him to protect him from his own sense of dishonor, that he had done something that allowed this horrible thing to happen to his daughter. Because of course, Jamie's main motivating factor is protecting Brianna. It has been since he sent her through the stones. So to have shattered that by his own actions would have caused him a great amount of pain, which of course is then what happened because Claire didn't tell about it. So, I mean, it's just like a huge snowball, and you miss all of that because they wrote it as some blasé thing that she just couldn't tell him because Brianna asked her not to. It's bullshit.
Interesting. That does make significantly more sense now that I hear that.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
But it's lazy writing not to do it. And it's secondary to my other problem with this scene, which is she refuses to say anything bad about Frank. She refuses to tell Jamie that he is not secondary to Frank. She just says, I love you so much. We both love you so much. Not, yeah, fuck Frank. Like, he was there when I needed him, sort of, but like, you're the love of my life. Like, that doesn't occur to her. And
so she definitely could have said, you're the love of my life. Like, you're like number one. You're the best. I get that. They have, okay, this isn't in the book, but in the show, I think they have like one of the most complex, like, step parent divorce, like, relationships that I've read about. And genuinely, I think it's actually alarmingly realistic most of the time as a child of divorce.
Yeah.
Like, I know, oh my God, there's like a whole section of Twitter that's like, Frank is the worst. And I'm like, Frank kind of is the worst in the book, but I also don't think we get like the full picture that the show paints of Frank. Because I think they've made Frank a lot more sympathetic, which I appreciate. And then like when Jamie was like, when he was like, basically like, Frank never did anything wrong. And she's like, Frank did tons of shit wrong, but like,
but doesn't tell you what any of those things were.
Right. And I mean, she definitely could have gone into that, but I think they have one of like the most realistic depictions of like step parenting and half parenting and like half siblings and everything else that I've actually seen on TV, because there's like, it's so complicated that you're like, okay, you're my kid, but you're not really my kid because you were raised by somebody else. And I still have to be respectful to that person. And but I'm also like weirdly jealous of that person. And then Brie made it so much worse by being like, well, my dad would have never said that, which is like the classic like 12-year-old, 13-year-old like step parent move where you're like, my real mom wouldn't have said that. And like,
right.
And it's freakishly accurate for being set in the 1700s.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that like Diana has kind of this boner for giving men these children to raise that are not their own, and then seeing how they do with it.
Yeah.
You know, just seeing how different sorts of men do raising different, children
and
that are not
Frank
theirs.
was totally like not sympathetic at all and like oddly racist.
Yeah.
But like this whole conversation, besides the whole secret keeping with Brie thing, because that totally made sense. Like my parents were never like, I'm gonna not tell your father. Like, yeah, of course you're gonna tell dad. Come on. That's like part of why I told you. Like when he was like, I've never been jealous of a dead man, I was like, oh shit, this is freakishly realistic.
Yeah. I mean, he's been jealous of Frank since the beginning. He's been jealous of Frank since she told him that she was married at the fire at Leac. You know what I mean? Like there's an undercurrent of that jealousy running through Jamie Fraser perpetually.
And the same thing with Frank, because like he's married to someone that's always in love with someone who's gone.
And truthfully, like that's one of the biggest things that I think that they rewrote about Frank that I don't think is the reality. I don't think that Frank cared a whole lot about Claire.
In the book, Frank was just generally like a giant douche bag.
Yeah, I think that he wanted to raise a child, but he didn't really care about.
Well, and in the book, they made like the whole big deal. He's like, I don't want to adopt a baby. I don't want to raise a kid that's not my own. And then Brianna came. And he was like, I'm in. And you're like, the fuck just happened?
Yeah. Oh, because I think he found out he was sterile or something. I don't remember. But like, the problem that I have with the way that they do things like that is how it fundamentally changes the characters. And so then of course how they shoot it. This particular tent scene, again, Jamie's like subservient and like supine and below her.
I took it that way. I took it as like Jamie's vulnerable.
But the point, and my point, and they've done it several times this season, where he's like practically like suckling her teat. That's how like childish he looks in reference to her. She's constantly over him, like trying to reassure him and bring him back to her in some real way. But he never even like sits up. He never even like takes any kind of like full throated posture that allows him to be a man at that point. And what the show has always touted as like female gaze is essentially just like an accident, which is Sam looked really good with his shirt off in season 1, and they let Claire be like sexually adventurous. And that meant the female gaze. But the female gaze is about men taking charge. It's about men taking responsibility for their actions. And occasionally it's about men mounting their wives, like, and pounding them into the tent floor. Like that's occasionally what the female gaze is about. Having her like straddle him. And I saw a bunch of people talking about like how there's no way she was ready. His shirt wasn't even pulled up.
Okay,
like,
yeah, that was totally valid. I was like, all right, hold on.
Valid, but also not the point. Like that isn't the point. Because for me, I don't want the sex scene to be like A to B to C to D to D. This is what happened first, and we have to spend this much time in foreplay because it doesn't look realistic. For me, I don't care.
I see like a whole bunch of complaints online where they're like, it wasn't long enough and like he wasn't like butt-ass naked. And I'm like, that's not the point of the scene, though. That's not
right.
Like the whole, it's not, we don't have to see Sam naked like constantly to make it a sex scene.
I don't.
The point is the reconciliation.
Scenes. Yeah, I don't need sex scenes to be the full thing. And like
it's
they
not
did
Game of Thrones. Like
it doesn't. I don't even know any other show that bothers with like, you know, every aspect. Like they did that in the first episode. They go from talking to nuzzling to like barely touching to like undressing each other to mounting mounting to everything to orgasm, and then like a little bit of pillow talk at the end. They do the whole thing, and it's kind of nice. But I don't need that every time. I certainly didn't need it with Roger and Brianna. It was way too much sex. But with Jamie and Claire, like
I so disagree.
Oh, it was disgusting. So anyway, I
loved it. I was in.
Somebody already said we need to have you on more because we need somebody who's in Roger and Bree's corner. But I'm like, I don't know about that because I can't handle it.
Oh my God, stop. I was like, the whole time. I was like, I'm here for it.
You did not feel like awkward in any way that they were so naked for so long? No. Oh, it's too much. Anyway, my point being, I don't need sex scenes to be accurate as to how people really have sex. Like it's fine for her to have like gotten on top of him and started grinding because who cares whether or not he's in her or not, or it doesn't, that's not the point. Point is they're being intimate again.
It doesn't need to be super, super realistic to like get the point across.
Right. My problem is woman on top is not.
Yeah, I didn't take it that way. I was just like, yep, he's vulnerable. He needs comforting. This is happening. I didn't read that much into it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
Except
just
for on Twiter where everyone was like, it's not long enough. I was like, oh, okay, let it go.
it's not about it not being long enough. If you've listened to Hangoutlander for any length of time, you know that I am not like, I'm very prudish when it comes to sex scenes. I don't enjoy them. I feel very uncomfortable. I don't really like them a whole lot. Mostly because I feel like in the show they are too long or they don't really serve a whole lot of purpose. Like my favorite one from season 2 is like they're in like the room in France and he picks her up and then like he
Oh, I
lays her
love
down
that.
and it
And then it
fades to
fades to
black on his
black. That was
chest.
one of my favorite ones too.
That was my
Because
favorite one.
they're so connected and like they're together and it wasn't like about having a conflict or resolving a conflict.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, we're happy. That's one of my favorite ones too.
That's one of my absolute favorites. It was so well shot. It ends on his chest. It's just beautiful.
Exactly.
And I'm fine with stuff like that. But again, that one was female gaze. Jamie picks her up. He shows like there's a show of strength. He lays her down, and then we like go down on his chest, which would have been her view of what he looked like in that moment.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem for me in this type of scene is they're losing what they want to consider being like the feminist show. They want to show that Claire is powerful, but they forget that women often want to see Jamie be powerful. We don't want to see him be supine. We don't want to see him be secondary to Frank. We don't want to see him be constantly having to be reassured by Claire's strength when he himself is also strong in lots of ways. Absolutely have them both apologize. Absolutely have them have this moment where they talk through their problems, but then have him get to a point where he reasserts himself and becomes a man again and not like this vulnerable shell. And that's what would have been preferable. And that's why that's why there's a lot of chatter about the sex scenes and the things that they do with Jamie and Claire, because he seems so diminished so often, and has been for a couple of seasons. And that's really an unfortunate glimpse into what the writers think of him, because they've always they make Roger out to be a little bit better than Roger really is sometimes. And then they make Frank out to be a whole lot better than he is.
Oh,
sometimes.
Yeah. They make Frank like,
yeah,
I agree.
And there's a diminishment of Jamie. It's like they think, it's like what you said, like you read the book and you felt like he was a little bit unrealistic. I feel like they're constantly trying to bring him down from where he is, when the truth is he's one of the best male characters of all time. Jamie does horrible things sometimes, but he feels a deep hatred in his soul for his mistakes, which makes him honorable, which makes him a man of integrity, which makes him this awesome person, on top of having all of these like other things that are awesome. So it's just frustrating when he's diminished because they feel like it's too unrealistic for him to be that good.
That's valid. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that.
Somebody wanted to talk about Harry Potter's tent. Yes.
Oh, the giant tent?
Why was it so large?
No one knows.
I thought they were good at like sets. Like if they were going to do anything wrong, at the very least, the sets and the costumes were going to be fine. And that was not the case. I don't believe that tent for 1 minute. But
well, the whole trick too with like how they shot it was like the low angles to make everybody feel like very claustrophobic and very vulnerable. It's like the whole Citizen Kane trick. If you could see the ceiling, then you feel trapped in. But yeah, I was like, that's not a realistic tent, because I was like, you guys like sleep outside all the time. Why aren't you sleeping outside?
It should just be like maybe a canvas over. I mean, it was just a crazy
right? Or like, also it bothers me that Brianna is still sleeping like a hut. In Fraser's.
I know. Well, everything about Fraser's
room.
Everything about Fraser's Ridge is way over the top. It's not supposed to be that big. That's supposed to be like a little shed. They have like a 1-room cabin, like Little House on the Prairie 1-room cabin, and it's way too big. So it's all too much, way too much. But anything else you want to talk about this episode? Because we've talked for an hour. Thought it was gonna be a short one.
So much. I do have to ask for somewhat of a spoiler. I can't imagine Billy Boyd is only going to sign on for 1 episode.
Somebody just asked, Billy Boyd, you always talk about Billy Boyd. Amy,
yeah.
We're here. We're here now. We're talking about Billy Boyd.
We found Billy Boyd, a.k.a. Pippin.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to come back?
I don't think so. I've read the book twice, and I don't really remember Forbes being more than this thing, than the dinner parties and a little bit of and then he has the gemstones. I
Which
want to
was like the
say,
most obnoxious thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It was like, pick out a gemstone. I'm like, measure your dick. Like, what are we doing?
I want to say that maybe there's something with his stones, and they try to get those back at some,
Okay.
but I can't even
The
remember
only way I
that.
could think is that like he's pissed that Bree doesn't marry him, so he like gangs up with Tryon or something. But I thought it was an interesting career choice for Billy Boyd to only be in one episode, if that's the case.
No, I mean, I think that there's definitely a chance for him to come back, because
Mm-hmm.
season 5 is going to be this endless Scottish gathering. And so there's going to be
Oh
all of these
goodness.
people that we've kind of seen come in and out, that are any Scots that we've seen are going to be there. And so there's potential for him to come back and maybe even cause some menace. But and I'm pretty sure that he's in later books. Let me see if anybody's
Okay.
saying. Yeah, there's people saying that he's in future books. Heather just said he's in future books. He's back in future seasons. Andrea. So anyway, yes, he will be back, but not for anything important right now, I don't think. So there's your spoiler. But Billy Boyd
Yes.
did great. I mean, it's funny to see him
It's
and
good.
be so short, and he looks old, and I was like, oh,
He's always
sad.
going to be a hobbit to me. Is that terrible?
No, that's
He
what
and
he
Sean
is.
Bean. Is it Sean Bean? No,
Yeah.
it's Sean Astin.
Oh, Sean Astin. I thought
Although
you.
he did a great job in Stranger Things, so he's upgraded a little bit
Yes, he was
in
great
my
in Stranger
eyes.
Things. But yeah, he is. It's very funny. I haven't seen Dominic Monaghan or whatever his name is in like a whole lot. I think I've seen him in one thing since Lord of the Rings, but like I can't imagine him as anything else.
Yeah,
And
no.
I mean, that's just what you are for forever.
Mhm.
Sorry.
I'm still a big Jocasta fan. I think Maria Doyle Kennedy is killing it, and everyone should watch Orphan Black if they haven't watched Orphan Black.
Yes, she's amazing. She's amazing in Orphan Black as well. She's really great. Although I will forever say that my Jocasta is Janet McTeer. Janet
Now,
McTeer is my favorite. Janet
Jocasta?
McTeer is she's in a couple of things, but my favorite thing that she's in The Woman in Black, and then she's in Sense and Sensibility. She's
Oh, who
Mrs.
is she?
Dashwood in Sense and Sensibility. Not the Emma Thompson one, but the newer BBC one. She's
Oh, I
amazing.
haven't seen that one.
Anyway, she's 100% my Jocasta. She's so like tall and regal and like just such a Mackenzie, and I love her. But anyway, Maria Joel Kennedy is doing a great job. I'm perfectly fine
Killing
with
it.
her. But anyway, next week, guys, it's a penultimate episode. There's only 2 left. Praise the Lord.
Tune in to see if Elise finds out what the hell happens in the end of this book.
Tune in
And
to
then I'll
find
live
out what.
tweet me reading the book.
I mean, maybe we'll get the end of Drums in Autumn. Maybe you'll have to read the book to find out what happens. Who knows? Who knows?
Let's hope Roger stops getting the shit kicked out of him at some point. But
Maybe that might happen. It might not.
or no, you're like Roger can continue getting the shit.
Yeah, I'm
kicked.
fine with that. Like he continue if he wants to keep being that misogynist, he can keep getting the shit kicked out of him. Let's be real. Thank you everybody that joined us. There's a bunch of people on YouTube, but Dee and Aaron and a bunch of other people, Fitstar Mama and Vicky Fraser. Thank you for joining us on Twitter. You guys are great. We had a good time, and we will see you at the same time next week. Elise, thank you for joining us.
Thank you
We
for
loved
having
having
me.
you. All right. Bye, guys.